Thank you so much, Vinod, for joining us on this podcast. Vinod is a seasoned sales leader who has transitioned from enterprise technology, mobility, and recruitment solutions into managed offices and real estate sector. And the best part is that he brings in a very strong foundation in solution selling and enterprise client management, with his experience at organizations like Naukri.com, Roundtape, and Ola. It has helped him build a deep expertise in enterprise acquisitions, partnership, and revenue growth before moving into flexible workspace industry. At Regus, CoWrks, and Awfis, he has scaled portfolios, led large revenue mandates, and managed high-performing sales team across markets. He's currently serving as the national head sales at DBS Workspace.
Thank you for having me. It is pleasure connecting with you, Shikesh. First of all, I must thank you also for giving me this opportunity, and which is gonna be more of awareness session about managed offices. I think the community that you lead is fantastic. I've met a few people online, although, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense for industry experts to have an online community and you know connect and discuss their interests and discuss what is it that they are building. Pleasure
Thank
connecting.
you so much. Thanks so much. No, the first one is a pretty interesting one because it's a changing office strategy. Like, over the last few years, if you see office space strategy has changed significantly. So from your perspective, how are CEOs and CFOs thinking differently today when it comes to leasing office space?
Yeah. So I think the decision while taking up an office or leasing an office has moved from a fixed asset decision to becoming a strategic lever for business agility, right? So right now people are using it very strategically in order to understand that how is it gonna, help them in the long run. So earlier long-term leases were is equals to stability. So people thought if we do long-term leases, have an office somewhere for a very long term, it'll be equal to like, people would perceive it as stability. And today, flexibility has become the core because it brings you a lot of ability to manage the risk going forward. CEOs today, ask how does the space decision support growth or protect us in case of the downsides? And finance lead or a CFO would ask me how is the capital going to be productive, or am I going to be trapped in terms of the fund allocation? So there is a certain change in the way that people look at the real estate strategy. And I've been advising teams, I've been advising the decision makers to treat real estate as a part of the balance sheet and the profit and loss decision, not just as an occupancy decision. You can occupy any sort of space, but it should make sense on your balance sheet and the P&L as well. These days, evolvement in terms of how real estate is being perceived has changed a lot from what we've seen in the past 10, 15, 20 odd years. And with the onset of GCCs, I think it's going to evolve further.
Yeah, I think this is pretty insightful because, and with a lot of restructuring happening, I think, this also makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
for organization to have flexible option. Now, the next one is around managed office. Like, first of all, would like you to tell our audience what is a managed office like?
Yeah.
And for organizations which are planning to set up or expand offices, what signals indicate that a managed office, or built to suit model makes more sense than a traditional long lease?
Yes. Does honestly, Rishikesh, as I was telling you, the perception has changed about real estate and how you make real estate decisions has changed. So managed office comes into the fore, and it has been one of the primary engine factors for this industry over the last 5 to 7 years, right? So there are some very clear signals when a traditional lease stops making any sort of sense for a large corporate. Now there are various signals that any person who is managing real estate for a certain company would also be encountering it there, right? So if you have a very uncertain forecast in terms of your recruitment, or you're looking at a new city to start your operations, completely new city, a completely new waters to test, or your scaling and contraction risk is very high. So you look at again the flexibility of a unconventional sort of a space, and unconventional by unconventional I mean managed office, right? So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Then your CFO might tell you, we need to preserve capital. We can't have capex. We can't have 5 crores on our books just to set up an office. Or is it gonna be at a juncture wherein your leadership is completely engrossed in the business side and they can't really give you any time to make these sort of decisions? Various factors, through which a company goes through, and how a procurement or finance person or even the administration and facilities heads make decisions is via some of these signals. So, and managed office brings all the flexibility that you need, right? You are not spending anything on your books, so there is no upfront capex there. Your scaling and contraction risk is also managed to a very large extent. And entering a new city, you're with an expert, you're sitting with an expert who know the city before you enter. And, a lot of things make sense when there is someone dedicatedly working towards it, right? There is a expert who is at the same table trying to make a decision with you. So I've always, my teams or me myself, we've always adapted that consultative approach, wherein what we do is we consult with the client and understand their needs and requirements in much detail before getting into it. So, and this has helped us a lot. And on the other side, the clients have been happy.
Yes, right. Now, we'll come to DBS Workspace. Tell us a bit about DBS Workspace. What do you provide? So we kind of went to the website and we found out is that you provide small private offices, open seats, and enterprise built to suit solutions. So how do these different formats service startups or say mid-sized firms and large enterprises differently?
Okay, so DBS Workspace as a company has been a legacy in the making. It's been in the market for over 30 years now. 3 decades, I think, over 3 decades now. And it's the second generation who's running the business these days. So right from offering business center services to co-working and managed office premise, the business has evolved a lot. And that's where we brought in Align also, where we pivoted within Align. Align is the new brand under DBS Workspace, which is what we offering managed office solutions. So we pivoted in this close to about a year or so. And from there onwards, under the legacy of DBS, Align would also foray into the managed office business. We've already forayed, for that matter. We've had a couple of locations open up in Bombay. I think north and south, we will be foraying it into very soon. I think within this year, uh, if things work fine. So, I think from providing smaller offices or ready to move offices, it was time for us to also evolve with the market and offer the managed office solutions. That is what we are getting into. And if you remember previously, we were talking about Align. So Align is the brand under DBS itself, which will be specialized into managed office solutions. Got it.
So earlier, I think DBS, if I'm not wrong, like DBS was into providing offices to the corporates in a traditional way, sort of. And now it has kind of launched a brand called Align, which is kind of a managed office offering of DBS Workspace. And yeah, and how does this structure help CFOs preserve capital while still giving leadership a premium branded office environment?
So, once we talk about managed office, the initial capital expenditure is completely off the table because the capex is done by the managed office operator, right? So what we do is right from curating buildings in the kind of vicinity or the kind of city that you're looking at, we curate a few buildings depending on your requirement and choice. Once you shortlist a building, we get into the design board. We design the office for you. The layouts are discussed, the open area, the airflow, the energy flowing across the workspace is everything gets discussed. And once that is done, we get into the project mode and we try and fit out the space as per your requirement or whatever has been agreed upon during the design phase. Now, once we deliver the space to you, which is well within a timeline, considering in-house projects team is working on it, who is answerable for every small aspect. The clarity in terms of delivery is very much there right from day one. So whatever we commit in terms of providing the space within, say, normally it's about 60 to 75 days for us to deliver a space. We provide the office, the ready to move office within that sort of a timeline. And during everything, the client is only supposed to overlook how the space is coming out. There's no spend, but they're not going to be spending anything for it. It's actually the kind of monthly fee or the rentals that they would pay. The Capex is actually converted into Opex, right? So your capital expenditure is converted into your operational expenditure, which happens to be one of the biggest advantages that companies in the growing phase have. They don't really want to lock capital. Every penny in the capital works for them on the business side, and that's where we specialize. Yeah.
We talked about zero capex and faster go live. Also, would love you to touch upon kind of, so when we see a lot of companies, they underestimate the cost and timeline involved in setting up an office from scratch. What changes operationally and financially when a company chooses your managed model instead of doing it independently?
See, the workspace formats are different for different sort of organizations, right? So it completely depends on the business life cycle. What phase are you in? So just to give you an example, right? We work with different sorts of organizations, right? From very nascent sort of startups to established enterprises who are like the Fortune 500, and every one of them has a different priority on their mind. Very different sort of a psyche when they decide for offices. So startups need speed and survival runway, right?
Yes.
So they need the office at the earliest possible, and the survival runway is through zero capex. That means you just get your office within the 60 to 75-day time period. You can recruit people. Day one, they come in and they start working and they start delivering for your results, just because you're in the scaling mode. You are wanting to become bigger. Now, the firms which are at stage two, which are growth firms who already raised Series A or Series B capital, they need scalability. And the brand credibility also needs to be taken care of. Just because investors would walk in, investors would be coming in and out of office, and
Yes.
the employees also these days look at the workspace and understand what sort of an organization am I going to work at. Right? We keep talking about millennials, we keep talking about Gen Zs, and Gen Zs for that matter. If you call them to a dingy workplace, they might not even come the next year. So, and I think,
Right.
that's been the true nature of this business these days. So, what we do is, for the scaling organizations, we provide the best in class buildings, which normally in a conventional thought would not have been available for it, right? Large floor plates. You have to be giving 3 years of your P&Ls to the landlord. They'll understand that if you will be able to pay or not. That's where our brands who are specialized into it, we take up the larger floor plate and we provide the sort of space scaling organizations would need. If it's, just to give you an example, if it's like a 50,000 square feet office, floor plate. So DBS would take up the whole floor plate and provide a part of it, maybe 5,000, 10,000 of however that scaling organization would need at the start. So what they get is access to the grade A buildings, grade A infrastructure, with the flexibility of not really having to take up the whole floor plate. Because we would still have a lot of access to the other clients. They don't really have access to that sort of infrastructure. So that's where we come in. And then we have large enterprises, MNCs. They don't care about scaling. They don't care about, what kind of initial amount are they supposed to pay. What they care about is compliance. They care about the sort of experience their internal clients, which is their employees would have, and the kind of control they'll have over the workspace, right? So I've worked very closely with a lot of MNCs. The look and feel they would need inside the office has to be very uniform across the country, different cities, different geographies, their offices look very alike. Compliance is something that they do not really do any sort of compromise with at all. So if you don't have certain compliance, that building would be rejected outright. With it comes control as well. So they'll have a lot of control if they do it this way.
No, just a question coming to my mind. What's the difference between a co-working space and a managed office?
Sure. So working space as a concept is very hip, very open workspace sort of a concept. Co-working, what normally, so again, try and explain this with an example. So co-working is a pre-fit office, ready to move office, right? From one desk to maybe a team of four, team of six, team of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. The possibility of customizing it is almost zero. The flexibility in terms of uh, your expansion and contraction is still there, and the kind of leases that you sign is not as big as the managed office. So it is more of for very initial phased organizations, or organizations who would know that their headcount is not really going to change in the near future, which could be 3 to 5 years, right? And these are pre-built offices. Managed offices, on the other hand, are customized to the core, right? So in a co-working space, you do not really have the choice of which building would you want to be. It is just a matter
Yes.
of that geography. So if you are in Delhi and if you want to be in central Delhi, you would say, okay, I need some space in Connaught Place or maybe Nehru Place, right? And there would be a few buildings wherein the co-working operators are there. You can't really choose a building. You can just choose an operator like DBS.
Yes.
And whereas with a managed office, you can choose the kind of building that you want to be, the kind of flow plate that you would need, how you want your layout to be looking like, where would the CEO sit, very
Yes.
detailed, right? So it's end to end customized. It is built to suit. We
Yeah.
do build to suit on a small scale as well for 2, 3, 4,000 square feet also, but managed
Yes.
office would be end to end for one single client. So how the space would look like, the design element, the kind of spend that you would want to do, right? It may become much higher than the standard expenses of Capex. You might want to spend a bit higher to showcase your office. And finally, with the operations as well, how many people on the housekeeping side, how would they look like? How many pantry people serving coffee? Which sort of coffee machine? Customized to the detail. So that's managed office.
Yes. And all these administrative tasks, like, these coffee machines, all those things are managed by DBS itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. End to end. So what you pay is one single fee, which takes care of everything.
Now, can you share an example like, where a company needed to set up quickly or expand in a new city, and how your solution helped them become operational faster?
So honestly, not really. As an example, growing teams would always look at, the cities that are giving them business, and that's where they would want to set up, business at. And while we talk about, any real estate decisions to be made in this aspect, anyone would want to be getting that office within a certain timeline, within a certain deadline, that this is the market, it, date is there, if their hiring is underway, they're already recruiting in that market, or on the other side, if the capital approval to set up that office is still pending at maybe the HO or maybe the international head office, right? And that's where a experienced managed office operator would come in, wherein we get you the kickstart that you always wanted to launch a new city, right? So your
Yes.
revenue starts faster. You don't need to spend the capex on day one, and your execution risk is very low, right?
Yes.
As I always mention, the real win isn't space. It is with the kind of speed that it is delivered at, with the speed at which you are able to enter that market. You might become 15 days late than your competitions. That's where I think we come in. And, not only one example, there would be a lot many organizations who go through this. While we deliver offices, we've seen a lot of things which work in the client's favor while they pick up an experienced managed office operator versus anything running off the mill, right? So 3 decades into doing something and 3, 4 years into something makes a lot of difference. Once you understand the geography of the country and how is it that you will be able to help the client, it makes a lot of difference.
Yes. Beyond the physical space, and I think we kind of started touching on this point in the last question also, is that
Yeah.
you also manage operations, maintenance, and support. So, how does this reduce complexity for head of admins and real estate teams?
See, in growing organizations, right, very high growth companies, the leadership attention is the most scarcest resource.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can't involve the senior management into the day-to-day affairs of running the office. And what we do is we take the cognitive load there completely on us while we operate their office on a day-to-day basis. It should not, real estate or any decision towards the space should not mean that it is consuming your strategic bandwidth. The admin and the RE teams of that client also need a lot of simplification. They don't want tough processes, three different things to follow to get the AMC guy in. And outsourcing everything to a managed office operator reduces this completely. The complexity is reduced to a very large level. Right. And, we've always tried to understand the organizational strain at a very large scale. How strained are they? For even a small aspect, how difficult it is for them to change strategy in the short term or even in the long term. It is rather better for them to offer it to a managed office operator whose bread and butter is that they've been doing that in and out. Right? So just giving you a small example there. Like say for an example, if you would need a pantry guy to be recruited, right, on your company payrolls. So now if you recruit them on your company payrolls and there are different compliances to it and you have to take care of it as your permanent employee. However, you are aware that your cafeteria operations are going to be outsourced very soon. You would not really need a person in the pantry permanently. So that's where a managed office operator would take that burden on themselves. They'll have the pantry guys with them, deploy them for maybe 6 months or 12 months at a certain area. They work there and then absorb them back to be deployed somewhere else. So that is something that a lot of organizations these days miss out on understanding. But this is another part of flexibility that people should look at.
Right. And where do you see the maximum traction coming in? Like, is it the tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities also?
I think our
Tier 2 and tier
I think our tier 2 cities are evolving into tier 1 these days, and the tier 1s would evolve into metros. So the kind of strain that you have on the metros these days, I think the tier 1 cities have already started to pitch in terms of the workforce division and where the organizations would want to set up shop at. And our tier 2 infrastructure is also at the growth stage, right? So you must have seen Indore, you've seen Ahmedabad, you've seen Lucknow, how it is growing. Kochi, for that matter, is another example. The infrastructure is moving towards the tier 1 aspect. And once it becomes that, even very large organizations would look at moving to these cities to set up shop. First of all, your real estate cost becomes cheaper just because the basic rentals itself go down. And then also you have the access to the talent pool at a much lower cost. So I think the growth is going to come from tier 1 and tier 2. Metros are going to give way to tier 1, and the larger workforce is going to be a part of the main workforce through tier 2 cities these days.
Got it. And you kind of operate across major business hubs in India. So how important is multi-city capability for enterprise planning, to scale or, decentralized teams?
It is honestly not necessary to look at it from a multi-city perspective unless your operations require you to be in different cities, right? So if your workforce or the talent pool is from that city, then it makes a lot of sense for you to enter that city and set up shop rather than calling them to the metros, making them spend a lot and to maybe for basic aspects like food, clothing, and shelter. They would rather be better off living in their hometowns and working for you. And that's where the organizations need to weigh that scale and understand if it is really needed for them to get into another city. But what we've seen is the consolidation of the workforce happening, right? You are not going to be having multiple offices across the city. If you're within a city, what you would want is flexibility for anyone and everyone to come at a certain place if they are willing to. Otherwise, they can work from a place of their choice. Our idea is to be very near to where they stay, right? Rather than expecting workforce to travel for maybe 1.5, 2 hours every day and you know coming to office. People want maybe a 15-minute to a 30-minute travel to the max. Spend the rest of the time maybe uh, you know living your lives. And yeah, I think it's for our clients or for the organizations to make a decision if they would really want to enter another city. And Other than that, consolidation in the same city, no hub and spoke models. Provide the flexibility to the workforce. If you need multiple offices, you just need to have a flexible workspace in that case. Like, we would also have spaces across different micro markets within the city. And I have multiple clients who have few seats everywhere, right? They would also have it in Andheri, they would have it in Lower Parel, they would have it in the south part of Bombay, just to ensure that wherever people live, they have something very close by to use as an office space rather than traveling to one simple space. And
Got it. So just one question out of curiosity is that um, you talked about long-term leasing model. So how does the commercial model work in this case? Managed office thing.
so commercial model is in this case is amortization of your cost. So you actually what you end up doing is, so I'll give you both the models for easier understanding. So in a conventional space, what happens is you sign a traditional lease, you spend upfront capex, right? It could be 4,000, 5,000 rupees per square feet. And you set up that office. Now in this case, and plus then once the office is ready, or once you want to get it ready, you have to look at different vendors, there are different work men issues, holidays, that delays, recruitment is already happening, all that you have to go through in a traditional lease. But once we talk about the unconventional lease or the managed office, what you have is someone who is committed to you that they'll be delivering the office in a certain amount of time. You don't have to spend the capex. You are there and you start working off. Now, the model in the unconventional side is amortizing that capex cost. And also, you are paying monthly for a very long term cost, which is on the operations side also, like repairs and maintenance, having your housekeeping, having your security guys. They are not really directly attached to your P. They are indirectly attached to you, and all the compliance aspects or the repairs and maintenance, the AMCs, the conditional requirements are all taken care by the managed office operator. So on that front, a lot of your bandwidth gets released so that your workforce and you yourself are able to spend more time on the business side. So normally, for any CEOs or CFOs, I would want them to check if their headcount or the forecast is truly predictable before you sign a conventional lease, right? So these are some of the questions that anyone has to answer before they strategize for something. Is your headcount forecast predictable? Are you using the capital to the best of its use? So if you would have saved these 5-10 crores, can you not spend it somewhere else and maybe grow the business? How much of your time is going to get consumed over it? And what happens if the business situation changes? You are locked in a 9-year lease. The business can change in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and you'll be stuck with that 9-year lease to ensure that you're paying continuously or you are, on the wrong side of law. So it makes all the sense to adapt to flexibility. I'm not saying that the cost of a conventional space and a managed office, is very similar. In some cases, managed office might be 5% costlier, but does it really make sense for you to look at that 5% and lock yourself for the next 9 years and not be frugal? We talk about frugality. Managed office brings that frugality. So real estate decisions used to be previously about space. These days, it is about optionality, right? If I have the option to save my capital and also be very frugal in terms of my expansion and contraction, right? Makes a lot of sense most of the times to even spend 5% more. Normally, whatever cash flows we run in terms of numbers, we've seen it is not really a case wherein conventional and a managed office, or a managed office is costlier than conventional. I'm just, even for an example, even for us to understand, even if it is 5% costlier, say, just to win the argument, even if it is 5% costlier, it still makes sense for any growing organization to look at managed office.
Yeah, means I kind of remember like most of these bigger businesses used to buy real estate to build offices because they used to take a lot of loan on that asset. It kind of also helps in their business, rotating the cash. But yes, you're right. These days times have changed and companies are growing faster, a lot of competition coming in, you are restructuring the things, and in these kind of scenarios, managed offices make a lot of sense. We know also, for companies who are scaling from small teams to large headcounts, how does your model provide flexibility without locking them into long term commitments?
Normally, for growing organizations, what we suggest is phased expansion. You don't have to commit to a very large space just because you think you're going to be expanding or that's how your business
Hmm,
is growing. So, what we give you
hmm,
is a ramp up model wherein
hmm,
you maybe take up 25% of the space right at the start and keep ramping it every 3 months
hmm.
or every 6 months by 10-15%, depending on how your workforce comes in. That helps the organizations to also hold on their operating costs until the recruitment has already happened. So otherwise, you will do a lease, you will fit everything out, and the employee is only
Yes.
coming in after 3 months. So it doesn't make
Hmm,
sense. So the ramp up model helps them for growing teams. We
hmm,
also sometimes allow them to ramp down after the lock in. So, as I mentioned, frugality. They don't have to commit to a 9 year sort of a lock in. We do a
hmm,
reduced lock in, maybe 3 years, 4 years. And
hmm,
after that, you are allowed to reduce the spaces.
hmm,
So, say for an example, if you took up 10,000 square feet and you thought you will go up to 15,000 square feet in the next 3 to 5 years. But what
hmm,
happened is business changed, AI hit
hmm.
your business, and you have to
पक्का नहीं है.
so
Ah, yes.
AI has hit your business. So if you reduce from 10,000 to 8,000, you need to
Hmm,
maybe. So
hmm,
if you come down from 10 to 8, we'll help you with it. What we do is we
hmm.
absorb the 2,000 back with us again and maybe lease it out to someone else. And the network in our industry helps a lot. So, someone from another city would want to set up shop, maybe with a small office, 1-2,000 square feet, and we lease it out to them. So that's how even the growing teams or small teams growing into larger teams get a lot
Hmm.
of help.
Yes. And I think the last question, which I think you have answered it a bit, like, but still I will put it, is that if a CEO or a CFO is about to sign a conventional long-term lease,
Yeah.
what question they should ask themselves before committing?
As I mentioned, right, very while they discuss it internally, even during their meetings, they need to understand all these aspects. I think most of the CEOs do that of
Yeah.
the best use of their capital. Is this really the best use of their capital? Second, would they be really having that kind of time to
Hmm,
get involved in setting up the office? And the
hmm,
third is, are they really very clear about the predictability of their headcount? If you are 100 people strong team today,
hmm,
how easily can you predict when would this be 150, 200, 500?
hmm,
And again, the business conditions, right? So anything can change. So you need to be very aware of any visionary CEO or a CFO would look at 5 years down the line, right?
hmm,
And they would need to understand that, okay, the business at this time is looking at 500 people, maybe in the
hmm,
next 3 to 4 years. But am I not supposed to take into account the kind of business changes that we might go through? And would we still need 500 people for that? And similarly, at the same space, as we were talking about tier two, it might so happen that the larger workforce might come in from tier two. And
yes.
what you're actually doing is setting up a very large office in a tier one city or a metro,
Hmm.
which may not be of any use in the next 3 to 4 years or maybe 5 years down the line. So I think these are some of the things that any CEO or a CXO needs to ask their own selves or maybe within the board while they discuss that is this really feasible?
And I think if all these people, from tier two cities are provided a space there, it also helps the company reduce the cost in terms of the salaries that it's paying, because I
Yes,
think so the companies also have to consider that. What is the arbitrage?
absolutely. So anyone coming in from a tier two has to pay rent, has to pay
Yeah.
every other bill. So those
Uh,
expenses to a very large extent are going to be borne by the employer. And in
yes.
case they are in their home city, you don't need to
Hmm.
take care of that. They take care of themselves.
Yeah, kind of. And now the Gen Zs are very particular about this.
Yes,
When you ask them what is the salary that you are expecting, then they will give you calculations. See, my house rent will be this.
absolutely. They'll ask you very clear questions. And I'm actually very fond of the Gen Zs, if I may say. They are very clear of what they actually want, right? They would ask you very clear questions for the kind of profile that you're recruiting, do I really need to be at office? Can I
Yes.
not really work from home? Right. And obviously, for the kind of efficiency or work delivery, you can only question them if the work doesn't get delivered. Maybe that's 3 months, 6 months down the line of employing them. You can't really ask that question on day one. So sometimes the clarity brings a lot of internal check also. We are calling people to from Indore to Bombay, right? And
Yeah.
why am I doing that? Just to ensure
Yes.
control. Why can't
Yes.
I get them desk? Why can't I get them a desk in Indore itself? And
Yes.
they're still working for me, and they'll be happy doing that.
Hmm.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much
much,
for
Vinod, for
joining
joining
us
us
and
and
sharing
sharing
all
all
these
these
insightful
insightful experiences
experiences
with
with us.
us.
I
I
think
think
this
this
is
is
the
the
first
first
time
time
that
that
we
we
are
are
doing
doing
a
a
podcast.
podcast on managed, office spaces. And thank you so much for taking our time and sharing these
No
insights.
problem. Thanks, Rishikesh. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, and look forward to connecting with everyone in the community. Thank you.